The ship docked with a soft thud. No announcements, no ceremony, just the quiet hiss of a pressure seal locking into place and the low hum of the station's ventilation system filling the silence that followed. Lily Monroe stepped off the ramp with a datapad in one hand and a small carry bag over her shoulder. She wore a plain gray jacket, work boots that had seen better years, and nothing else worth noticing. No weapon on her hip, no armor plating, no escort waiting at the bottom of the ramp to walk her in safely. Just her, the bag, and the datapad. And the kind of expression a person gets after too many long hauls through deep space. Tired, but not bothered. Veth Station swallowed her immediately. It was that kind of place. Enormous and loud and layered with smells that had no names in any human language. The docking bay alone was 3 levels high, wide enough to park a small fleet inside, and filled wall to wall with creatures, cargo, noise, and movement. Alien merchants shouted prices in 4 different languages at once. Loading machines groaned under the weight of massive crates. Something with too many legs skittered across the upper walkway and disappeared into a vent. Lily looked at her datapad and kept walking. She had been to Veth Station twice before. She knew its layout well enough. Bay 7 for human-registered cargo. Customs window on the east wall. The kind of place where you kept your head down and your pace steady and you did not make eye contact with anything that had more muscle than common sense. She was almost to the customs line when Grack stepped in front of her. He did not appear from anywhere specific. He simply materialized the way very large things do when they want to be noticed. Suddenly, completely, filling the space in front of her like a wall that had not been there a moment ago. Grack was the station's gate commander. He was Vethian, which meant he was reptilian, scaled in deep green and black, and stood at just over 8 feet tall. His shoulders were wide enough to block a doorway without trying. He had been working this station for 11 years, and in that time he had learned one reliable thing about living creatures. They all showed fear when he stood close to them. It was not something he demanded, it was simply something that happened. The body betrays the mind every time. The eyes go wide, or the breathing changes, or the muscles lock up in that specific way that says, very clearly, I am smaller than you and I know it. He had seen it in soldiers. He had seen it in diplomats. He had seen it in creatures twice the size of most humans. He stepped in front of Lily Monroe and waited for it. She glanced up from her datapad. Just once. A quick look, the kind you give something when you want to confirm it is there. She took in his height, his mass, the row of small ridged horns running along the top of his skull. Then she looked back down at her datapad and kept scrolling through her cargo manifest. Grack stood very still. He was not accustomed to being looked at like that. Not like a threat. Not like something impressive. Like a slow connection in the middle of an important download. Mildly inconvenient. Briefly acknowledged, already forgotten. He cleared his throat. It was a sound like gravel moving inside a metal drum. Lily looked up again. This time she held his gaze for a moment. The way you hold a gaze when you are waiting for someone to say something useful. Human, Grack said. His voice was low and even, and designed by years of use to carry weight in it. Traveling alone. Yes, Lily said. No escort. No. Grack studied her face. He was good at reading faces. It was part of the job. He could read fear in 47 documented species and a handful of undocumented ones. He knew the micro-expressions, the small, involuntary signals that the brain sends out before the conscious mind can stop them. There was nothing on her face. Not the performed calm of someone trying very hard not to look scared. Not the rigid blankness of someone using discipline to hold themselves together. Just an ordinary face, looking at him the way someone looks at a door they are waiting to open. He had no category for it. He asked for her clearance code, more out of habit than intention. She read it off the datapad without looking up. He checked it on his own screen. Everything was in order. Everything was always in order with cargo runners. There was nothing to hold her for. He stepped aside. He stood there afterward and watched her walk to the customs window, and he had the deeply uncomfortable feeling that he had just made a choice he had not actually made. Like the decision had already been made somewhere else and his body had simply followed instructions he had not written. On the upper walkway, pressed against the railing with a crate dolly he had forgotten he was holding, Doss watched the whole thing. Doss was young, barely 2 seasons out of his training year, still learning which parts of the station were safe to cross alone and which were not. He had grown up hearing stories about Grack the way young station workers did. The same 3 or 4 stories repeated until they became something close to legend. Nobody pushed through Grack's gate without his approval. Nobody made him step aside. He watched Grack step aside. He turned to the older worker standing next to him, a heavy-set Sural named Preth, who had been on the station for decades and claimed to have seen everything worth seeing. "Did you see that?" Doss said. It was not really a question. Preth was quiet for a moment. His eyes were still on the customs window, where the small human woman was handing over her datapad with the same unbothered energy she had carried through the entire bay. "I saw it," Preth said. "What did she do?" Doss said. Preth watched her for another few seconds. Then he picked up his own crate and started moving again, slowly, the way old station workers move when they are thinking about something they do not have a good answer for. "Nothing," he said. "That's what she did. Nothing at all." Doss looked back at the customs window. Lily Monroe collected her stamped manifest, tucked the datapad under her arm, and walked deeper into Veth Station. The crowd shifted around her without being asked to. Not dramatically, not in the way a crowd parts for someone dangerous or loud or visibly armed. Just quietly. Just enough. Like something very old and very patient had decided without a word that her path was her own. Cole Warren had been on Veth Station for 6 years. He had arrived the way most humans arrived at places like this, chasing a deal that turned out to be smaller than advertised, and then staying because leaving required more energy than he had left. He knew the station the way you know a city you never meant to live in. Every shortcut, every bad corner, every face worth remembering, and every face worth forgetting. He was waiting near the cargo registry office when he saw Lily coming through the crowd, datapad under her arm, bag on her shoulder, completely unbothered by the fact that she had just walked through one of the most reliably dangerous docking bays in the outer systems alone. He let out a breath he had been holding since her ship pinged the station's arrival log. "You made it," he said, falling into step beside her. "Why wouldn't I?" she said. "Because it's Veth Station and you came alone." "I always come alone." Cole had no good response to that, which was a feeling he was used to around Lily. They had known each other for 4 years, crossed paths on 7 different stations, and he had never once seen her behave as though the universe owed her any particular reason to be nervous. It was not something she performed. It was simply how she moved through the world, like the world was a place she had already made her peace with. He walked with her toward the lower registry, pulling up his own datapad and going through the cargo details she needed. Everything was ready. 2 shipping containers, cleared and sealed, sitting in Bay 12. Simple job, in and out. But Bay 12 was in the lower corridors. Cole slowed down a little without fully meaning to. "We can go the long way," he said, "around the outer ring. Takes about 20 extra minutes, but it keeps us up on the 2nd level the whole time." Lily looked at him. "Why would we do that?" "The Vreth brothers are working the lower corridors today." She waited, as though expecting the sentence to continue into something that actually concerned her. Cole lowered his voice. "They are not small, Lily. The biggest one took down a Cathali soldier last season, full armor, combat-trained, and the Vreth brother walked away without a mark on him. They have been shaking down traitors down there for 3 months, and station security looks the other way because nobody wants the paperwork." Lily nodded slowly, as if filing this away somewhere useful. Then she turned and walked toward the lower corridors. Cole closed his eyes for 1 long second and then followed her. The lower corridors of Veth Station were exactly what the name suggested. Lower in every sense. Lower in the structure, lower in the lighting, lower in the quality of everything around you. The ceiling was closer here, and the walls were older, and the sounds that bounced between them were the kinds of sounds that made the back of your neck pay attention. Pipes ran along the ceiling and dripped things that were probably just water. The smell was different, heavier, metal and something organic underneath it. They turned a corner and found them. There were 3 of the Vreth brothers, which was always how they worked. 3 because 3 was enough to cover every direction a person might try to run. They were broad and gray-skinned, someone between a primate and something older, with wide, flat faces and arms that were just slightly too long for their bodies. The largest one was holding a small alien merchant by the collar of its jacket, 2 feet off the ground, going through its bag with his free hand while the other 2 stood blocking both ends of the corridor. The largest one heard footsteps and turned. He looked at Cole first, which was reasonable, because Cole was visibly tense in the way that made predators feel useful. Then his eyes moved to Lily. Lily had stopped walking, not because she was frightened. She had stopped the way someone stops when they are looking at a situation and deciding what it requires from them. She was looking at the Vreth brother directly, not challenging him, not performing bravado, just looking, the way you look at something when you are deciding what it actually is. The Vreth brother was very good at moments like this. He had a system. He turned his full attention onto the smaller, weaker-looking one first, which in this case was clearly the human woman, and he held the eye contact and let his size do the rest. It always did the rest. The other creature would look away or step back or make some small movement that confirmed the hierarchy and let everyone move forward with the transaction. He held the eye contact. Lily held it back. Not aggressively, not with clenched jaw or raised chin or any of the signals that said a creature was bracing for confrontation. Just evenly, patiently, the way you maintain eye contact with something when you are not afraid of what it might do, because you have already run the numbers quietly inside your own head and arrived somewhere calm. The Vreth brothers' system required a signal, a flinch, a breath, a blink that lasted just a fraction too long. Something that confirmed the shape of things, that told his instincts the situation was proceeding the way situations were supposed to proceed. No signal came. The merchant was still dangling from his hand. He had forgotten about the merchant. He was entirely focused on this small human woman who was looking at him like he was a mildly interesting problem she had not yet decided to solve. 3 seconds passed. 4. His grip on the merchant loosened, just slightly, without him deciding to loosen it. 5 seconds. He took 1 step back. Just 1. It was not dramatic. There was no sound, no ceremony. His left foot simply moved behind him by about 12 inches. But the corridor felt it. The second Vreth brother, standing near the far wall, turned his head toward his larger companion with an expression that had no name, but meant something close to, "What just happened?" The third one, near Cole, shifted his weight to his back foot. Cole stood absolutely still, breathing through his nose, afraid that if he moved or made a sound, the whole thing would unravel. Lily walked forward. She stopped beside the large Vreth brother, reached up without any particular urgency, and took the merchant's bag from his free hand. Then she looked at his grip on the merchant's collar. She did not say anything. She just looked at it. He put the merchant down. Lily handed the bag back to the merchant, who took it with shaking hands and pressed themselves against the wall, not entirely sure whether they had been rescued or whether something worse was still coming. Lily looked at the merchant and said, "Bay exits are to your left, second door." The merchant moved, quickly, without looking back. Lily walked toward Bay 12. Cole followed her on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, his heart doing something irregular and unhelpful inside his chest. They walked in silence for almost a full minute. The sounds of the lower corridors moved around them. Nothing followed. Eventually, Cole said in a voice that came out smaller than he intended, "What did you do back there?" "I picked up the bag," Lily said. "Before that." She thought about it for a moment, as if the question required genuine consideration. "Nothing," she said. "You did something." "I stood there." Cole walked another few steps, trying to find the place in his mind where that sentence made sense and matched what he had just watched with his own eyes. "That's what scares them," he said, mostly to himself. Lily glanced at him sideways. A thing that hunts for a living, Cole said slowly, working through it out loud, needs the other thing to act like prey, needs it to flinch or run or freeze up the wrong way, and you just didn't give it any of that. Lily was quiet for a moment. No, she said. Doesn't it scare you? Cole said. Even a little. She thought about that one too. She was honest with her thinking, which was one of the things Cole had always respected about her. A little, she said, but a little isn't enough to show. Cole had nothing left to say to that. They walked the rest of the way to Bay 12 in silence, and the lower corridors let them through, and nothing moved against them. And by the time they reached the cargo containers, Cole had decided that the most dangerous thing he had ever seen on Veth Station was not armed and was not loud, and had arrived on a standard cargo runner with a carry bag and a data pad. And it had done absolutely nothing to earn that title. That was the part he could not stop thinking about. News on Veth Station traveled the way bad smells do, quietly, quickly, and into every corner whether you wanted it there or not. By the time Lily Monroe had her cargo containers loaded and sealed, the story of the lower corridors had already passed through 6 different languages and gained at least 3 details that were not true. Some versions said she had used a weapon no one could identify. Some said she had spoken a phrase in the Vreth brothers' own dialect that triggered some kind of deep biological response. One version, circulating mostly in the upper docking levels, said she had not even looked at them, that the Vreth brothers had simply sensed something coming and moved out of the way before she turned the corner. Cole had heard all 3 versions within 2 hours. He found each of them easier to believe than the truth, which was that she had done nothing. The footage did not help settle things. Veth Station had cameras in the lower corridors, old ones, grainy, mounted at angles that were more habit than purpose. The footage showed Lily stopping, showed the Vreth brother turning toward her, showed 45 seconds of 2 creatures looking at each other, then showed the Vreth brother stepping back. Diplomatic staff on the upper levels watched the footage 4 times. Then they called a meeting. Lily found out about the meeting because Cole told her, and Cole found out because a Cathali administrative aide had come to the cargo registry looking for a human named Monroe and had not been particularly subtle about it. The summons was polite in the way that summons from powerful people are always polite, carefully worded, formally structured, and not actually optional. Lily went because there was no good reason not to. The diplomatic chamber was on level 9, which was the part of Veth Station that had carpet and temperature control and lighting that did not flicker. It felt like a different building entirely. Lily walked in with her carry bag still on her shoulder and her jacket still the same plain gray it had been all day, and she sat down in the chair they pointed her to without making anything of the fact that there were 6 alien ambassadors on the other side of the table and one very uncomfortable human admiral next to her. Admiral Drew Calloway had arrived on station 2 hours ago, called in from a fleet posting 3 systems over the moment word spread that a human civilian was becoming a diplomatic incident. He was a composed man by training and a worried man by nature, and right now both of those things were competing visibly on his face. He had reviewed the footage on his way in. He had read Cole's unofficial account. He had prepared 3 different versions of a calming explanation and was not yet sure which one fit. He leaned toward Lily before the meeting formally opened and said quietly, "Please let me do most of the talking." Lily looked at him. "Or not," he said. Ambassador Reen opened the proceedings. She was Cathali, tall, thin, silver-skinned, with large, dark eyes that moved with a slowness that suggested they were taking in more information than they appeared to be. She had studied human culture academically for the better part of 4 decades. She spoke their language without an accent, which was either impressive or unsettling depending on how you felt about things that were too prepared. She placed a small projection unit on the table and played the corridor footage without introduction. Everyone watched it. The room was quiet in the specific way rooms get quiet when everyone in them already knows what they are about to see and is still not sure what to make of it. When it ended, Reen looked at Lily and said, "We would like to understand what was used." Lily said, "Nothing was used." "That is not a sufficient answer," Reen said, not unkindly, just precisely. It's the accurate one, Lily said. Calloway shifted in his seat. Reen folded her hands on the table and approached it differently. She was a patient person. She had learned that patience was the most reliable tool in any room. The Vreth brothers have a documented threat response history covering 9 years of station records. In that time, they have not retreated from any recorded confrontation with any species. You are, by every biological and physical metric available to us, the least threatening organism that has ever entered that corridor. I know, Lily said. And yet, Lily agreed. One of the other ambassadors, a broad, dark-scaled Sural named Voth, whose species produced some of the most decorated military commanders in the known systems, leaned forward slightly. He had not planned to speak. He was here as an observer, but something about the way the human woman said, and yet, in the same flat, unbothered tone she seemed to use for everything, was pulling at something he could not name. Reen continued, We need to understand if this is a trained response, a human military technique we have not previously documented, something that can be replicated or countered or categorized. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, It is not trained. There is no technique. Then explain it, Reen said. Lily looked at the table for a second, not searching for an excuse, but actually thinking about how to say something plainly that she had never needed to put into words before. We come from a place where everything wanted to eat us, she said, for a very long time. Things much bigger than the Vreth brothers. Things faster, things stronger, things that hunted in groups and knew the land better than we did. And we survived anyway. Not because we stopped being afraid, we were afraid constantly. But we learned that showing it was the most dangerous thing we could do, so we stopped showing it. The room was quiet again. Over enough generations, Lily continued, it stopped being a decision. It just became how we are. We feel it. We just don't wear it. Voth sat back in his chair slowly. He was looking at her the way a person looks at something they have held in their hand for years and suddenly understood for the first time what it actually was. Calloway was looking at his own hands. Reen studied Lily's face for a long moment with those slow, careful eyes. So it is not courage, Reen said. Not exactly, Lily said. What is it then? Lily thought about that. Habit, she said. The word sat in the middle of the table and nobody moved it. Reen let the silence run for a few seconds and then closed the formal session. The other ambassadors gathered their things and filed out with the careful quiet of people processing something that had not fit neatly into any box they had brought with them. Voth was the last to leave. He paused at the door and looked back at Lily one more time. He did not say anything. He just looked. Then he left. Calloway waited until the room was empty before he spoke. He was looking at the blank projection surface where the footage had played. You know what the strange part is? He said. Lily waited. I have served with soldiers for 20 years, he said. Trained ones, decorated ones, people who have been in genuine combat and come out the other side. And most of them, in a quiet room, will tell you that the thing they worked hardest on was not skill. It was exactly what you just described, learning to carry the fear without letting it out. He paused. And they called it discipline. They called it training. They called it the hardest thing they ever learned. He looked at her. And you're telling me you just do it? I'm telling you we all do it, Lily said. It's just how we grew up. Calloway was quiet for a moment. Then he almost laughed, but it came out smaller than a laugh, more like the sound a person makes when something is too true to be funny. Lily picked up her bag and stood to leave. Behind her, she heard Reen's voice. She had not realized Reen was still in the room. The ambassador was standing near the far wall, half in shadow, watching her with those slow, dark eyes. Your species does not understand what it is, Reen said. Calloway turned. What do you mean? Reen looked at him for a moment, then back at Lily. It has no natural predators left, she said. It removed every threat on its own world, and yet it never stopped behaving as though it was still surrounded by things that could kill it. It kept the vigilance, It kept the calm. It kept all the instincts it built in the dark, even after the dark was gone. She paused.
"Do you understand what that makes it?"
she said. Calloway opened his mouth. Reen had already walked out. Lily stood in the empty diplomatic chamber for a moment, carry bag on her shoulder, plain gray jacket, worn boots. The lighting was steady and warm up here on level 9. Nothing flickered. She thought about what Reen had said. Then she picked up her datapad, checked the cargo loading schedule, and went back to work. The lockdown alarm was not loud. That was the first thing Nora Ellis noticed when it started. She had expected something sharp and urgent, the kind of sound that moved people fast. Instead, it was a low, repeating tone, steady and patient, rolling through the corridors of Veth Station's mid-levels like a slow tide coming in. The kind of sound designed not to cause a stampede, because whoever built this station knew that a stampede in a sealed structure killed more people than most of the things that triggered the alarm in the first place. Nora had been 3 corridors deep in the mid-level engineering section when it started, running a diagnostic check on a secondary coolant relay that had been throwing soft errors for 2 days. She was 23, had been posted to Veth Station for 4 months, and had the specific confidence of someone who was very good at the technical work and still learning everything else. She reached for her communicator when the tone started and got static. Then a clipped automated message telling her that mid-level sections 7 through 14 were under containment protocol, and that all personnel should secure themselves in the nearest sealed room and wait for further instruction. She looked at the corridor around her. She was in section 11. She tried her communicator again, still static with a thin thread of a signal underneath it that kept breaking up before it formed words. She caught 2 of them clearly. The first was containment. The second was Davrak. Nora had read about the Davrak in her station orientation materials, the same way she had read about explosive decompression and reactor cascade failures, as something documented and categorized and kept at a safe theoretical distance. The orientation file had described them as apex classified, which was the Galactic taxonomy's way of saying that no natural ecosystem had ever produced anything that reliably hunted a Davrak for food. They were 8-limbed, fast in enclosed spaces, and had a sensory system that tracked movement, heat, and the specific biochemical signature of fear response hormones across distances that made hiding functionally pointless. The orientation file had also noted, in flat administrative language, that Davrak encounters had necessitated the full evacuation of 2 colonial outposts in recorded galactic history. Nora stood in the corridor and thought about this for about 4 seconds. Then she started moving. Not toward the nearest sealed room. She had checked the station map when she first came on shift that morning, the way she always did, because she liked knowing where things were before she needed to know where things were. The nearest sealed room in Section 11 was a storage unit with a manual lock and no ventilation redundancy. If the containment protocol ran long, which containment protocols on stations like this often did, she would be sitting in a box with recycled air and no way to communicate, while a creature that tracked biochemical fear signatures figured out where the sealed rooms were. She moved toward the wider maintenance corridor that connected Sections 11 and 8, because Section 8 had a proper emergency shelter with independent air and a hardwired communication panel that the static could not touch. She was halfway there when she heard it. She stopped walking. The sound was not close. It was maybe 2 corridors over, possibly 3, and it was the kind of sound that the body understands before the mind does. A low, resonant scrape of something large moving against a metal surface, followed by a pressure. Not a sound exactly, more like the memory of a sound, that settled into the floor and the walls and the soles of her boots, and told every biological alarm she had ever been given by several 100,000 years of evolution that something very large and very capable was nearby. Nora stood still. She did not run. Running triggered movement sensors. Running released adrenaline in quantities large enough to change the chemical texture of the air around a body. Running was, in almost every practical sense, the single worst thing she could do. She breathed slowly instead. In through the nose, out through the mouth, long and even. She had learned this not from combat training or military school, but from her father, who had taken her camping in dense woodland every summer when she was small, and who had told her, the first time she had frozen up at the sound of something large moving in the trees nearby, that slow breathing was the only tool that worked when your body wanted to do something stupid. She heard it again, closer this time, one corridor over. She moved, not fast, not slow. The deliberate pace of someone walking with purpose but not urgency. The kind of movement that produced the minimum biochemical noise. She turned a corner. The Davrak was there. It was at the far end of a wide maintenance corridor, roughly 30 feet away, and it was larger than anything the orientation file had adequately prepared her for. 8 limbs, the front 4 currently gripping the edges of a door frame it had come through. The door itself was on the floor in 2 pieces. Its body was low and wide, and covered in something between scales and dense fiber that caught the corridor lighting and gave nothing back. Its head was broad and forward-facing, which meant its primary senses pointed in the direction it was interested in. It was interested in Nora. She stopped walking. They looked at each other. Nora's heart was doing something dramatic and unhelpful inside her chest. She was aware of it the way you are aware of a car alarm going off nearby. Present, loud, not relevant to what she needed to do right now. She let it run. She did not fight it because fighting it would cost energy and attention she could not spare. She simply noted it and set it to one side and looked at the Davrak. She looked at it the way her father had taught her to look at the large, dark shape in the tree line. Not staring it down, not looking away, just watching, reading the body. The front limbs were tense but not coiled. The head was still. It had not dropped low, which in most large predators meant it had not yet committed to anything. It was reading her, too. She understood that. It was doing exactly what she was doing, gathering information, checking signals, waiting for the data that would tell it what this situation was. She needed to not be prey-shaped data. She kept her breathing long and even. She let her shoulders drop slightly, not in submission, but in the specific way that said, not tense, not about to run, not producing the biochemical noise of something that has already decided it is about to die. She held her position with the loose, grounded stillness of something that had roots. The Davrak made a sound. It came from somewhere deep in its chest and moved through the corridor like a physical thing, rolling over her and past her and into the wall behind her. It was a threat display. She knew it was a threat display because every cell in her body was absolutely certain of it, filing urgent reports that she was not reading. She tilted her head, just slightly, just enough to change the angle of her gaze. She made a sound back, low from her chest, nothing formed or intentional, just a tone that was even and unhurried, and occupied the same sonic space as the Davrak's sound without fighting it. The Davrak's front limbs shifted on the doorframe. It took one step forward, slow, testing. Nora did not move. The step stopped. The Davrak held its position at roughly 25 feet and looked at her with its forward-facing head and processed whatever data she was giving it. She was giving it almost nothing useful. No spike of fear chemicals sharp enough to confirm prey status. No flight posture. No frozen lockup of the specific kind that meant the creature across from it had already mentally surrendered. Just a small, soft, entirely unarmored thing standing in the corridor looking back at it with the steady attention of something that had decided this moment was manageable. For 40 seconds, neither of them moved. Then the Davrak turned. It was not fast. It was not dramatic. It simply reoriented its body the way a large animal does when it has decided that a particular direction is more interesting than the one it was facing. It moved down the side corridor to the left, its 8 limbs quiet on the floor, and within a few seconds the sound of it was gone. Nora stood in the empty corridor. She let out a breath that she had apparently been managing rather than holding, which was a distinction that felt important for reasons she could not explain. Her hands were shaking. She noticed this with mild interest and tucked them into her jacket pockets. She heard boots on the floor behind her and turned. Sen was standing at the corridor entrance with a weapon raised in both hands and an expression that had moved some distance past fear into a territory that did not have a common name. He was Cathali, broad-shouldered for his species, experienced enough to have a row of service indicators on his collar that meant something to people who read such things. His weapon was pointing at the space where the Davrak had been. His hands were shaking more than Nora's. He looked at her, then at the empty corridor, then at her again. "It left," Nora said. Sen lowered his weapon very slowly. "I saw," he said. His voice was careful, the way voices get when the brain is still catching up to what the eyes reported. "The shelter in Section 8 should still be accessible," Nora said. "We should move." Sen looked at her for another moment. Then he nodded and they walked, and he stayed half a step behind her the rest of the way. And he did not fully understand why until much later, when he was sitting at his reporting terminal trying to put what he had seen into a format that a station incident report was designed to hold. He filed it as accurately as he could. He described the Davrak's behavior. He described Nora's position and movements. He described the 40 seconds. He described the turn and the departure. His commanding officer read the report 3 times. Then she opened a direct channel to the Human Fleet Liaison Office and asked a single question. "How do you train them to do this?" The human officer on the other end was quiet for a moment. The silence was not the silence of someone searching for an answer. It was the silence of someone deciding how to explain something that had never needed explaining before. "We don't," he said. The channel stayed open for a few more seconds. Then it closed, and the question sat in the commanding officer's office like something alive, taking up more space than its words suggested, refusing to be filed away neatly with the rest of the day's paperwork. The bar on level 6 had no official name. Most people who used it called it the corner, which was accurate in the way that practical names usually are. It sat in the corner where 2 of the station's older corridors met, had been there longer than most of the current staff could remember, and served drinks from enough different species' chemical comfort ranges that the menu required a separate pamphlet to navigate safely. Lily Monroe found a table near the back wall, not because she was cautious, but because she preferred to see the room. Cole Warren arrived 2 minutes later with 3 drinks he had selected carefully and placed in front of the right people without being asked, which was one of the things that made him useful to know on a station like this. Nora Ellis came in last. She looked like someone who had been through something and had mostly processed it, but was still working on the last small piece. Her jacket was dusty from the mid-level corridors. Her hands were steady now. She sat down across from Lily and Cole and accepted the drink Cole pushed toward her without comment. They sat for a moment without talking, which was comfortable in the way that silences are comfortable between people who have each independently had a very long day and do not need to perform recovery for each other. Cole looked at Nora. "I heard what happened in Section 11, he said. Nora looked at her drink. "Word travels fast." "It's Veth Station," Cole said. "Word travels before the thing it's about has finished happening." Nora almost smiled, not quite. "I was scared," she said. She said it plainly, the way you say something when you have decided that the truth is more useful than the version of the story that makes you sound better. "The whole time, my heart was going like something had come loose inside my chest. My hands were shaking when it was over." Lily was looking at her without any particular expression, just listening. "People keep saying I was brave," Nora continued. "Sen filed a report that used the word fearless. I read it because someone forwarded it to me, and I did not know how to explain that it was wrong without making it sound like I was arguing with a compliment." "You were not fearless," Lily said. "No," Nora said. "But you were functional," Lily said. Nora looked at her. "That is the actual thing," Lily said. "Not the absence of fear. Just the ability to be afraid and still do the next correct thing. They are not the same. Most people think they are the same." Cole was turning his drink slowly in his hands, looking at the table. "The aliens think we don't feel it," he said. "That's the part I keep coming back to. Every species that has observed something like what happened today, or what happened in the lower corridors, they all arrive at the same conclusion. that the human involved must not have been afraid, because fear is a signal. It produces outputs. It changes breathing and posture and chemical composition and muscle behavior, and all of those outputs are readable if you evolved to read them. He paused. And we produce almost none of them, not in the way they expect. We produce them, Nora said. I was producing all of them. Internally, fear made us build fires and travel in groups and watch the dark carefully. She paused. But the ones who showed it, who let it out in the open where the thing hunting them could read it, those ones did not make it as far. So over time, we got very good at keeping it inside, running all the same processes, using all the same information, just not broadcasting any of it. The bar moved around them. A group of Sural merchants came in loud and took a table near the entrance. Somewhere near the bar, something spilled and someone laughed about it in a language that had a lot of consonants. Nora was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever stop feeling it?" she said. "At some point, does it just go away?" Lily thought about that honestly. "No," she said. "I felt it today when I came through the docking bay and Grack was standing in front of me. I felt it in the lower corridors. I feel it right now a little in the background, the way you feel a low sound through a wall. It does not go away." "Then how?" Nora said. "You just get used to carrying it," Lily said. "It gets lighter, not because it changes, but because you get stronger around it." Cole nodded slowly. He had nothing to add to that. It was one of those sentences that sat in the air and did not need company. The three of them were quiet for a little while. Then the door of the bar opened and Ambassador Reen walked in. She stood at the entrance for a moment, scanning the room with those slow, dark eyes, until she found the table at the back. She crossed the room without stopping to explain herself to anyone and sat down in the empty chair at their table as though she had been expected, which she had not been. Cole looked at Lily. Lily looked at Reen. Reen did not ask for a drink. She folded her hands on the table and looked at Lily with the direct, careful attention of someone who has spent a long time thinking about something and has finally decided to say it out loud. "I owe you an honest statement," Reen said. Lily waited. "I have studied your species for 40 years, Reen said. I have read every formal report, every behavioral analysis, every documented encounter between humans and other species under conditions of stress or threat. I believed I understood you, not completely, but sufficiently." She paused. "I was wrong." "About which part?" Lily said. "About the direction of it," Reen said. "I understood the history, the evolutionary pressure, the long period of coexistence with large predators on your home world. I had all the data." She looked down at her folded hands for a moment. "But data about a thing and the experience of being in a room with the thing are not the same." She looked back up. "You are afraid right now," she said. It was not a question. Lily considered it. "A little," she said. "Yes." "I cannot tell," Reen said. "I know," Lily said. Reen was quiet for a moment. The bar noise moved around them, indifferent and warm. "That is what I could not get from 40 years of reports," Reen said. "I knew your species had learned to suppress fear outputs. I had that documented. But suppression implies effort. It implies a constant, active process of holding something back." She looked at Lily, then at Nora. "What I did not understand until today is that for you it is not suppression. It is not effort. It is simply how you are. The fear runs underneath completely, and the surface is just calm. Not performed calm, actual calm, built on top of actual fear. Both things at once, fully, without conflict." She stopped. Nobody filled the silence because it did not need filling. "Every species in this galaxy," Reen said finally, "evolved to fear something larger than itself. That fear shaped everything: behavior, culture, architecture, the way we design our cities and our ships and our relationships with each other. The fear of being hunted is the oldest foundation there is." She looked at Lily. "Your species was hunted by everything for longer than most civilizations have existed, and you came out the other side afraid of nothing we can see. Not because the fear is gone, but because it went somewhere we cannot follow it. She paused one more time.
That is not bravery,
She said. Bravery is a choice made in a moment. What you have is older than that. It is something that was pressed into you over so much time and so much darkness that it became structural. It became the shape of you. She looked for a word and did not quite find one. I do not have a name for it in any language I speak. The table was quiet. Nora was looking at her drink. Cole was looking at the wall. Lily was looking at Reen with the same calm, even attention she gave to most things. Present, unhurried, carrying whatever she was carrying on the inside without letting any of it show on the outside. Reen stood. She straightened her jacket. She looked at Lily one last time with something in her expression that was close to the kind of respect that takes a long time to arrive and does not leave easily. Then she walked out. Cole let out a slow breath. Well, he said, nobody had anything to add to that either. Lily finished her drink and picked up her bag. She had an early departure window and cargo that needed one final check before she could file the clearance. The work did not stop because the day had been unusual. It rarely did. She said goodnight to Cole and Nora and walked through the bar toward the door. The room moved around her the way rooms had been moving around her all day, adjusting, making space, not quite able to explain why. Outside in the corridor, she passed a group of young dock workers coming off a late shift. 4 of them, tired, carrying equipment, talking among themselves. One of them recognized her from the footage that had been circulating and stopped walking. The others stopped too. They watched her pass. She did not look back. The youngest one, barely old enough for a station posting, turned to the oldest worker in the group, a weathered, unhurried woman named Petra, who had spent 12 years on Veth Station and had seen most of what it had to offer. Is that her? The young one said. Petra watched Lily walk. The plain gray jacket, the carry bag, the worn boots moving at an easy, unhurried pace through the corridor. No weapon, no armor, no escort. Nothing around her that said dangerous or significant or worth your attention. Yes, Petra said. What did she do? The young one asked. To make the Vreth brothers move. To make the Davrak turn around. What was the thing she actually did? Petra watched until Lily turned a corner and was gone. The corridor was ordinary again. Just a corridor, just light and metal, and the low hum of a station doing what stations do. Nothing, Petra said. The young one frowned. Nothing. Nothing at all, Petra said. She picked up her equipment and started walking. And that is the whole point. She did absolutely nothing. And not one thing on this station could look away. The young one stood there for a moment longer, looking at the empty corridor where Lily had been. Then they walked on too, and Veth Station continued around them, loud and busy and full of 100 different species going about their lives. And somewhere in its lower levels, 3 Vreth brothers were being very quiet and not discussing why. And somewhere in a sealed report, a Cathali soldier was still trying to find the right words. And somewhere on level 9, an ambassador was sitting alone and thinking about a word she did not have. And Lily Monroe walked to her ship, checked her cargo, filed her clearance, and went to sleep. The dark did not bother her. It never really had.